Okay, folks, here back on the live stream. A lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about the kind of cesspool that is the U.S. Attorney's Office in Alaska and a recent filing by a lawyer for a guy who was, sorry, I'm a little volume adjustment here, by a lawyer who was filed a motion for a new trial for a guy who, we'll talk about that in a second, who was accused and convicted of, basically embezzling or sending a bunch of money at ConocoPhillips to a buddy of his, millions of dollars. But it kind of goes back to the Judge Kindred thing and his resignation, the whole thing with the nudes and that Karen Vandergraw, one of the assistant U.S. attorneys, and there's a new filing involving her lover, now I think husband or maybe fiance, I think they got married, James Klugman. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in a filing that has some just wild stuff in it we're going to go through. And then the special session kind of continues to move, the August 2nd special session. There's a few updates I'm going to talk about with that. And there's a few more people that have filed to run for office, including somebody against Alexi Moore, who the kind of crazy Republicans in her district tried to go after, like they do. I mean, basically a few people in these parties. So if you've been in party politics or politics at all, you know the Republicans and Democrats, there's a district for like a House and Senate. They have these districts that people get elected in. But then they have, the Alaska District 25 or 36 or 18 Republican Party, same with Democrats. And the people who get involved in these, party level, district level politics are the most partisan people. There's a few of them. There's a dozen of them, maybe plus or minus, and they get involved and they think they like run the show and they have these motions and these censures and it's just bullshit. And that's why I went to nonpartisan or independent 5 years ago. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that situation. Somebody else got in the governor's race. There's a fifth Republican now, a guy named James Parkin out of Angoon to file to run for governor. That makes 5 Republicans. And there's going to be a lot more Republicans, some Democrats, I'm sure independents, who knows how many we're going to have for this open governor seat next year. It could be, I'm guessing it could be 20 or 30, maybe half of which, or maybe a third or half of which are somewhat, maybe credible or have a chance or actually campaigning, and then a bunch of other randoms that aren't going to do much but are going to be on the ballot. So it's a top 4 situation where, top 4 go to the, advance through the primary to the general for the ranked choice voting. So it could be very interesting how that plays out and who might squeak through. So I want to start by talking about, okay, so now if you remember about almost a year ago I broke this story, July 4th, 2024, the Kindred, and I'd heard rumblings about this for a long time about investigation, and, it all came out that he had something going on with the former clerk, who was then working for the U.S. attorney in Alaska, and some kind of, relationship inappropriate, which he was investigated for. But then in the course of that, it came out that this Karen Vandergraw, who was an assistant U.S. attorney, she was sexting him nudes, in court, like wild shit. And then she lied about it, right? And so this whole thing blew up, and it was covered by, I broke the story, but then Bloomberg Law kind of went deep on it. And since then, there's been, the Kindred resigned, but this Vandergraw stuff has been kind of going on and proceeding, as long as this Klugman guy, who's the lover, who I think they either got married or they're going to get married, but she was married before. He was engaged with somebody else. They met. But this filing, again, it's a motion for a new trial. I'm going to go through it here. I'm just going to read it because it's so good. It's just so wild what's happening in this. I'm not one of these conspiracy people about these like wacko, people in the Kenai, David Hague. They want grand juries and the courts are all corrupt and judges are all corrupt. But I mean, a lot of that's just bullshit. But sometimes this stuff is like, there is wild stuff going on. So again, I'm just going to read this motion. It's part of a motion for a new trial by this guy, what's his name? Nathan Kias, I think. Just go back to this 2020. A senior ConocoPhillips, this is from the news article. A senior ConocoPhillips employee tricked the oil company into paying more than $3 million to a business owned by his friend, an Anchorage police officer, for work that was never performed and materials were never received. This is a public media article from 2020. He was found guilty, but Kindred was the judge, and these other assistant U.S. attorneys who were involved in this whole Kindred stuff were part of it. And it gets really good. So I'm just going to go ahead and read. This is a section of the, sorry, I just want to make sure. This is a section of the filing for a new trial, motion for a new trial. This section is, I'll just show you. I'm going to put this it's on the website. You can go ahead on my Facebook page or Twitter, landmine Twitter, and read it. But this is what I'm reading. Maybe I'll just read it. You guys can read along with me. This is really good. Okay, AUSA Klugman was one of 2 assistant U.S. attorneys who tried the case. He was attorney of record from January 2024 through October 2024. He participated in all trial-related litigation. Most pretrial and limiting motion practice was authorized by AUSA Klugman. There's a bunch of exhibits here that I got as well that show some really good stuff. He gave the opening statement at a trial, number 259. He examined the government's primary witness, Forrest Wright. He authorized responses to Mr. Kia's post-trial motions. Importantly, AUSA Klugman is engaged to AUSA Vandergraaf. See, I don't know if they're married or lovers or they've been together for a couple of years, it sounds like. There is significant evidence the two commenced their romantic relationship long before it was disclosed, despite the fact that AUSA Klugman, then the criminal chief, now he's the guy in charge of the criminal department in the attorney's office, right? High position. Was AUSA Vandergraaf's superior with the U.S. Attorney's Office and therefore had a reporting obligation with respect to inter-office romantic relationships. There's another exhibit it references. Even when Vandergraaf moved in with Klugman around December 2023, I mean, they're all sleeping with each other. They're sexting nudes and they're all all this stuff. Klugman denied there was any intimate relationship to report. Even as the two planned a holiday in Hawaii together, he denied there was any intimate relationship to report. Klugman engaged in other instances of dishonesty in connection with his relationship with Vandergraaf. For example, Vandergraaf was promoted to the superior position of senior litigation counsel in September 2023 during Klugman's tenure as criminal chief. Klugman claims that he had no input in that promotion. There's another exhibit reference. He also claims that he never recommended Vandergraaf for the position of deputy criminal chief, the next in line below him as the criminal chief. Yet two of AUSA Klugman's superiors attribute Vandergraaf's promotion to Klugman's insistence. James said the only choice for deputy is Karen Vandergraaf. It really can't be anyone else in the office. I need it to be Karen. This is his lover, who's involved in the trial with him. Klugman insisted that Vandergraaf was the only person qualified in the office to be deputy criminal chief, and that I had to appoint her as deputy. By the way, this all started last week when I heard from a source and confirmed that Klugman was either escorted out of the office or removed from the office. He was demoted. We're going to get into that in a second, but he was. I don't know if he's fired or on leave. The Vandergraaf, she's been on leave, I think, since last summer. I don't know if she's working or on. I don't know what's going on, but she still works there. I mean, she's sexting nudes to the judge. She's having romantic kind of lover situation with her boss. Klugman's lack of candor ultimately resulted in his demotion, so he lost his job as criminal chief. When Kate Vogel, the first assistant U.S. attorney, was asked directly about whether Klugman would mislead her or lie, she stated, "I worry about his honesty. I don't feel like I've experienced honesty from him. So yes, I guess I would not put it past him to be dishonest." This is the former criminal chief in the attorney's office in the state of Alaska, for the District of Alaska, federal. Lane Tucker, the U.S. attorney for the District of Alaska, gave a similar opinion of Klugman, describing him as not truthful, lacking candor, and without impartiality one expects from a prosecutor. And without the impartiality one expects from a prosecutor. This gets real good right here. This is from Tucker, who, by the way, before I read this, she's his boss. So why she didn't get rid of the guy or deal with him a long time ago is another question. She's in charge. She's the confirmed person to be the U.S. attorney for the state District of Alaska. I'd say he's not truthful and does not have candor. I feel like many conversations we had about case-related things, I felt like he was hiding the ball because his explanations made no sense. It just seemed like he was trying to avoid giving me certain information. So certainly candor was a problem. And, I question his honesty. If he's not being honest and fully forthright in questions that I'm asking him and transparent, I feel like that implicates honesty. I think he clearly had his own agenda. He seemed to have in certain cases, I don't know if I'd say animus. I don't know if I'd go that far, but he was bound and determined to retry and convict this particular defendant whose sentence was vacated. But he was bound and determined to retry and convict this particular defendant whose sentence was vacated. He had a real bone to pick with him. And whether this was because of something that occurred during the trial, whether it was because his ego was offended because the judge vacated the sentence, I have no idea. At the same time, there was another defendant. Should have been a defendant who was never charged for some inexplicable reason. And the few cases that came to my attention, I'm like, this seems like you have some sort of personal vendetta. Some personal vendetta is too strong a word. But you're not looking at this in really objective, sort of overreaching way. You've got a real bone to pick with this guy. You're giving this guy a free pass. There was no rhyme or reason from why I viewed as like a prosecutorial perspective. He'd sort of treat different defendants differently. Oh my God. So one question I have, if she's the attorney, if she's the U.S. attorney for the district and she's his boss and she's saying this stuff now, this is like looking back. I mean, maybe there's some other thing going on here about, some issue with the guy, but to say this stuff is wild in a court. This is like an exhibit. They're referencing an exhibit where she gave this, I guess, deposition or interview. But she didn't deal with him. So this guy, he's the criminal chief. It sounds like he's getting his lover, maybe now wife or fiance, promoted. and then lying about it, didn't disclose the relationship. I mean, that's how this works. When you're somebody's boss and you're fucking them or dating them or being with, there's rules. You got to tell somebody, hey, I'm with this person. They shouldn't report to me, whatever. And then they lied about it, it sounds like, according to this, and they went to Hawaii together. There's a whole thing that I was reading through the exhibits I got a hold of, and he's kind of like trying to go back and say when he bought the tickets, and he doesn't remember exactly, and he couldn't get from Alaska Airlines, etc. The whole thing's wild. I'm going to keep reading this. Klugman says that Vandergraaf moved into his home in December 2023, and his romantic relationship with Vandergraaf began around January 2024. So she moved in December 2023, but they didn't start banging until January 2024. Living, it seems weird. He was demoted around December 2023. Mr. Kia's trial began this is the Conoco guy. Mr. Kia's trial began approximately 3 months later, in March 2024. Pull this up here. With AUSA Klugman as one of 2 trial attorneys. Klugman claims he never discussed Mr. Kia's case with his live-in girlfriend, Vandergraaf, or used her connection with Judge Kindred. Don't forget, she's sexting the nudes to Kindred. He further claims Judge Kindred would have no reason to know of the relationship with Vandergraaf, despite the fact that his entire staff of the criminal division of the U.S. Attorney's Office seems to have been aware for months prior. What a cesspool. I mean, I used to always think like attorney, assistant U.S. attorney. I mean, this is the top echelon of kind of law, right? Of lawyering, prestigious. You're going after bad people, right? I'm going to talk in a little bit about my friend, full disclosure, my friend Sergei Nevodov, who was charged a year ago for the snow machine nonsense, where they sent 20 armed agents at 6 a.m. with guns and machine guns, and they handcuffed his 14-year-old kid for trying to sell snow machines to Russia to make some money. But it's like, I used to, believe in this stuff. I was raised to respect the government, respect the rule, and I do respect the rule of law. But the fact that these people are in charge, they're the ones who are making the decisions of like who's indicted, who's getting charged, how are they going after people. I mean, you have the former the U.S. Attorney for the District of Alaska basically saying he doesn't have impartiality and he goes after certain people differently, and he has animus towards people. Equal protection under the law. Everybody's the laws, the law's blind, all that. I used to believe in that stuff. Not anymore. Now we're going to get to Vandergraaf here. Vandergraaf also played a role in Mr. Kia's prosecution. This is where it gets real good. Although it was less substantial. She served the privilege filter attorney, reviewing Mr. Kia's personal emails to filter out any attorney-client correspondence before disclosure to the trial team. She likely attended court proceedings as well. At least she acknowledged she may have attended court to observe Klugman's opening statement or something. But she could not recall exactly when she attended. Mr. Kia's, of course, does not have the benefit of continuity of counsel because this post-trial litigation exhausted his funds for private counsel. Undersigned counsel was not trial counsel, was not present during trial, and cannot say when Vandergraaf observed Mr. Kia's trial. Vandergraaf denies any involvement in Mr. Kia's case. She further denies discussing the case with Klugman, whom she had cohabitated at the time. However, Vandergraaf's repeated dishonesty is already a settled matter. AUSA Vandergraaf lied to the Judicial Council and to OPR. I think that's Office of, which one's OPR? Office of Public, it's a federal thing. Blanking on the OPR. I think that's the people that investigated the whole situation with Kindred. OPR issued findings against her that included a finding that she intentionally misrepresented to OPR and the Judicial Council investigators the actual nature of her intentions and the full scope of her relationship with the judge. See Office of Prosecution Responsibility, Executive Summary. In summary, Vandergraaf claimed in response to an initial inquiry by OPR, I do not know, nor have I ever had, a romantic, intimate, or close personal relationship with Judge Kindred. I have not sought such a relationship with Judge Kindred. My relationship with Judge Kindred has always been courteous, but professional. Yeah. A year and a half later, after the release of the Judicial Council's report referencing an exchange of nude photographs between Kindred and a then unnamed senior AUSA, Vandergraaf gave a completely different account to OPR and admitted she exchanged numerous nude photographs with Judge Kindred over a period of months. She further acknowledged that the messages were exchanged over Signal because the application does not store messages. Yeah, ask Pete Hegseth, all those guys about that when they brought in the journalist to the chat. There is, therefore, no written record that would reveal the full extent of her communication with Judge Kindred. Even after the extent of her relationship with Judge Kindred became a matter of public knowledge, Vandergraaf refused to acknowledge her actions violated her professional responsibilities. When asked whether she thought an attorney who sent nude photos to a judge shouldn't participate in a case that the judge is handling, Vandergraaf stated, I just don't know the answer to that. When asked whether a defendant would have a right to know what a prosecutor and presiding judge were exchanging nude photographs, Vandergraaf similarly stated that she does not know whether there's a right to it or not. Whether there's a right to it or not. Klugman, Vandergraaf had a reputation for dishonesty as with Klugman, Vandergraaf had a reputation for dishonesty with the U.S. Attorney's Office. First, U.S. Attorney Kate Vogel stated quite bluntly, I think Vandergraaf's a liar. U.S. Attorney Lane Tucker states, I wouldn't trust her to do anything. I don't think she's honest. She further explains, I think she violated a whole bunch of rules and professional responsibility. I think it indicates a remarkable lack of judgment and lack of candor and honesty. So it's so wrong on so many levels that she shouldn't be a lawyer at all. How do these people still work there? I mean, I think they're still on leave, administrative leave. It's been a year. I mean, I know things move slow sometimes, but Jesus Christ. And I totally forgot about this. I feel bad. This is a new thing for the live stream. I want to thank John Quick. This live stream is sponsored by John Quick out of the Kenai. John's great. Very appreciative of John Quick being a sponsor of the show. I feel like Ben Shapiro now. I'm doing like the live reads. John supports independent journalism. He's happy to be a sponsor of the show, of my live stream. So I really want to thank John Quick out of the Kenai for being a sponsor of the live stream. He's a big supporter of independent journalism, and I appreciate him being a sponsor of the show. So if you guys want to sponsor the show or do an ad or, do anything for the landmine, we sell ads. We have, you can contribute monthly or one time on alaskalandmine.com/subscribe. We appreciate it. But I do want to thank John Quick for being a sponsor of the live stream. So this is, the situation with this U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, Tucker's gone. There's a new person in acting. They haven't even put in a new U.S. Attorney yet for the District of Alaska. But my other question is, like, if she, Tucker and Vogel were saying these things about this guy, Klugman and Vandergraaf, why weren't they fired? Maybe they're worried about getting sued because they're dealing with lawyers. But, I mean, it shouldn't. If you can't fire somebody for doing this kind of stuff, sleeping with each other, lying about it, especially in her case, sexting nudes to the judge, if you can't get fired for that, I don't know what you can get fired for. There's another situation, which I reported on last year, which I mentioned a little while ago. This guy, Sergei Nevodov and Mark Shumovich, who I know both of them, but Sergei we go back 20 years. We moved to Alaska around the same time in 2004. They charged him, the feds, all the way to D.C. Over this Russia nonsense a year ago. He was trying to ship snow machines to Russia, which he's done that before. He's shipped cars to Russia. He's from Kamchatka. It's Kamchatka, okay? It's way far in the east of Russia. Way far away from Ukraine. They were trying to charge him with some stuff about luxury goods and these sanctions and blah, blah. Anyways, they send all these agents to his house at 6 a.m. last summer with machine guns, and they handcuffed his 14-year-old son. He was in jail for a week. Now there's a motion, which I'm going to do a landmine story, and this is a motion I just got a hold of from his lawyers, basically asking for a motion to dismiss the charges because it sounds like the regulations they used and what they cited, the government, referenced regulations relevant to North Korea, not Russia, North Korea, and also in the time frame that they were trying to get the snow machines over there, the law, so one of the things they were charged with was not having a license, not having an export license. Well, the time they were trying to send the snow machines, 3 years ago, 2 or 3, it was like 2023, I think it was, or 2022. Anyways, it was I think it was late 2022. Anyways, at the time they were trying to do that, there was no requirement to have an export license. So according to this amazing motion to dismiss the charges, they used the wrong regulations. This is the government. You'd think they would never miss this stuff. Wrong regulations applying. This is what the motion says. I'm going to do a story on this later. Applying to North Korea, not Russia, and that they didn't need an export license at the time they were trying to export the snow machines. So this is fascinating. I don't know if there's going to be a motion, a hearing, or oral arguments or what, but this has been a year. He's had to deal with this stuff. This is just crazy. And I really, really, really hope that they drop these charges. I mean, these jackbooted thugs at 6 a.m. come to his house with machine guns and tactical gear, and they're playing fucking army. If you arm the police like military, they're going to act like military. I'm very pro police. I think I'm very about the police and them doing their jobs, and I'm not about this defund the police nonsense. But when they run amok like that, when they want to play army or play SWAT team and go to somebody's house with a kid who's never been in trouble before. They could have called him and said, "Hey, come on down. We're investigating you." He would have come down. He's not some gangster murderer with, guns and charges and drugs, and he's not some mobster. Other funny thing about his arrest and when he was indicted last year, they tried to keep him. Right? They wouldn't give him bail. They wouldn't grant bail. So there was a bail hearing from his lawyers, and the government. This guy Adam Alexander. He's the assistant U.S. attorney. I have no evidence he's sleeping with anybody in the office. I think he might be, somebody who's not sleeping with everybody in the office. But he argued the most bizarre thing. He basically said we can't put him on bail because of his criminal associates and his Russian connections. Basically, they insinuated he was some kind of like Russian oligarch mobster who the Russians were intent on protecting. And if he was released, they were going to fly in some FSB, KGB type who was like a Moses, who was going to grab Sergei, take him to the Canadian border, smuggle him across the border into Canada, and then get him back to Russia. He went to school here. He graduated UAA. He has 2 kids. He has a house. Like, this is insane. This is what this Adam Alexander guy was. I mean, it was like a 1980 spy novel. So they eventually got bail. They gave him bail. He has an ankle monitor. I think they've gotten some of the bail restrictions lifted. Like, for a while, he couldn't leave the Anchorage Bowl. I think he was able to get a few exceptions, and they've relaxed it, but he still has the monitor. So I'm going to do a story on this wild motion for dismissal because what his lawyers are saying, and the other guy, there's 2 of them. The other one's Mark Shumovich, that is saying that they used the wrong regulations about the wrong country, North Korea, and they didn't even need the export license, is what one of the things they were charged with, not having an export license, which wasn't at the time required. So it'll be fascinating how the government responds to this. I'll be really interested to see if there's a response, what their response to the motion is, and if there's oral arguments. So that's, kind of talking about just the disaster that is the cesspool of the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Alaska. Again, this motion, I got this motion about what I just read about Klugman and Vandergraw last week. I heard about it. I got a tip that he was like either escorted out of the building or told to leave. I don't know if he's on leave or paid administrative leave or if he's fired. But yeah, this guy, what a beauty. What a fucking beauty these people are. They're supposed to be the ones we entrust to uphold the law. So that's that. I want to talk a little bit about the governor's special session, which I talked about last week. I did a live stream about it. It's for August 2nd. A lot of people are very upset. He's telling the Republicans not to show. Some want to come. Basically you have like Sarah Vance, Jamie Allard, Frank Tomaszewski, probably Kathy Tilton. The really, really conservative ones, they're probably not going to show. But the other ones who are, Justin Ruffridge, Will Stabb, Julie Colomb, some of the more even though they're in conservative districts, some of the maybe more moderate ones, or some of the ones who are maybe worried about the election next year, or who just don't want to be kind of a pawn in this thing, they're going to go. So it's hard to say, how long this thing lasts. I mean, he can call them in. He has to give a 30-day notice per law. But I found something interesting. I'm going to kind of pull this up here. This is in the statutes. Let me pull this baby up right here. This is part of the statutes. Now, it says here, this is basically how the governor can call a special session. It says he has to give 30 days advance of convening date started in the proclamation unless, and there's 2 things here that apply. The proclamation is issued while both houses are in regular or special session, or the proclamation is issued within 1 hour after the second house has adjourned from a regular or special session. So even if they go and say, this is stupid, fuck you, we're leaving in a day or 2, he could theoretically keep calling them back immediately, starting August 2nd, if they adjourn, up until the point of the start of the next session, regular session in January. Now, I don't know if he's going to do that. It sounds like the relationship between the governor and the legislature is absolutely poisoned. It was always bad, but now it's gone from bad to worse. There's a bunch of, I'm hearing people trying to change plans, whether it's legislators or staff. There's an issue of housing. They have the legislative apartments, but they only have 32 or 34 of those. There's 60 legislators, 3 live in Juneau. There's staff. There's the accommodations. I got a hold of an email from LegAffairs that basically lists the accommodations available. Very little availability in some of them downtown and in the valley, and they're very expensive. Also, which really made me excited, the Driftwood was not on there. The Driftwood is now run by Tlingit and Haida. They bought it several years ago. If you recall, I did a landmine story about that, how they treated us all like shit and kicked us out and tried to raise the rent and just were as unprofessional as you could imagine. Now, they still aren't on the list, the recommended housing list, which is funny because the things like, last time I was there, it was basically empty. They've run it in the ground. I mean, you could be blind and dumb and just out of the state and not even there in Juneau in the summer and make money with a hotel, right? And when I was end of May, I was still in Juneau. There was like parking lot was empty. So I don't know if anybody's staying there. I'm sure they have some guests, but I almost guarantee they have rooms. But the Driftwood is still not on the housing list, which just goes to show you how bad they screwed that. People stayed there for years. I had stayed there for 5 years. Tom Wright had been there 15 years. Joe Hayes, staffer, had been there for 8 years. A lot of people had been there for a long time. And the way they just screwed that up was bad. So there's people changing plans. They're kind of, this has really caused a lot of folks problems. I'm not saying he doesn't have the right to do it, but he didn't really consult any of them, maybe a few of his allies. it was, Edgmond, Speaker Edgmond, and Senate President Stevens both said they were basically like caught off guard. I think Edgmond said surprised. That was the word he used. Stevens said disappointed, but that they aren't going to have the votes for the override almost certainly. I mean, not even close, especially on the budget override of the education veto. But like I said last week, they can just do a supplemental appropriations bill in January, pass it real quick. It'll be they can do it in matter of days. Send it to the governor. He'll veto it. He's got 15 days, and then if they have the votes to override, which they had 46 to override his veto of the bill, which stands to reason they would have 45. Only 40 votes are required to override a veto of a bill. 45 votes are required to override an appropriation or spending bill, revenue bill. So if they had 46 to override the bill, it stands to reason they would have 45 to override the appropriation of money that was in the bill, the $200 that he cut out of the $700 BSA increase. So I imagine they'll just pass an supplemental appropriations bill in January, and it'll delay it by a month as far as getting the money in there. So that's special session. We're what are we about? Less than a month away, August 2nd. So we're about a little over 3 weeks away from that. Other thing I want to talk about is let me just pull up this article here. It's put in the Sunday Minefield. Alexi Moore. Let me just. I should just read. Well, I don't need to read the whole thing, but basically, Alexi Moore, the Republicans in District 28, her district, had some resolution to pull their endorsement of her, and they cited some of her votes on some of these. The education bill, I think there was like an internet tax bill, and then about missing a vote. I mean, it's all this like party bullshit that Republicans and Democrats both do, and Democrats are better at it in Alaska because they know they're in a red state, so they realize they shouldn't be running the show in Juneau. I mean, they basically run the House. They have a couple of Republicans, Louis Stutz and Chuck Kopp, who make the majority possible. In the Senate, it's a little more split, but they have more Republicans, but they still have more Democrats. But by all accounts, I mean, Trump won Alaska by like almost 14 points. They shouldn't have majorities in the legislature, in the House and the Senate, but they do for a kind of litany of reasons, which I can kind of go into later. But the Republicans are just really bad at not sticking together, and they go after each other. They eat each other alive. They disagree on things, and they do it in public. I'm not saying the Democrats are, I have a lot of issues with Democrats, believe me, but they're a little better in Alaska, at least, at kind of keeping that hidden because they realize how close their numbers are and the fact that they're lucky to be in charge. So they do this, and Moore posted about it and said she was disappointed and she was very, sad about the whole thing. It sounds like they might have pulled it. So I don't know if it's even going to even still happen, but it the fact that it even happened in the first place tells you kind of what you need to know. I mean, Alexi's cool. She's a mom. She's in Juneau. She's down there. Jubilee Underwood too. She's a mom. They're in the same Senate district. They're both reps, and they're younger. People with kids. That you'd think you'd want that. I mean, they're kind of like you think a good poster child for the Republican Party. Instead, they go after her. So the next day after that, Steve Menard, who had run against her last year, he filed a letter of intent to run. And if you remember, Sumner won the primary last year. Then he dropped out. He just decided he didn't want to stay in Juneau. He would have won re-election easy. He drops out. There's Menard, Moore, and this Jessica Wright, who's the wife of this Stephen Wright guy. They always run for office. And if you remember, after the tabulation, the ranked choice retabulation, she only won by 12 votes. So now you have this Republican stuff going on. It's out there, and she's an incumbent, so she's favored, obviously. But who knows what's going to happen now? She's going to have to deal with this Menard guy going. He's got a name as Steve Menard, Linda Menard, his mom, legislature, his dad, the Menard Center. So that's something else that's going on that we should pay attention to for next year in that Wasilla district. Other thing is there's a guy, James Parkin, who filed to run for governor. I don't know anything about this guy. I know somebody who knows him. He was a teacher, principal in Angoon. He works at Kensington Mine now. He filed to run as a Republican. So now you have 5 Republicans. You have him, Bernadette Wilson, who's pushing this full dividend delusion nonsense. Edna DeVries, the mayor of Matsu-Borough, who's 84, I think, this month. Who am I missing? Click Bishop, and then Nancy Dahlstrom. So Dahlstrom's lieutenant governor, Click Bishop's a former senator. Bernadette Wilson's kind of the only one really been talking. It's still very early. The primary is not for another over a year, but that's 5 Republicans. There's a whole bunch of rumors about Greg Taylor is basically already campaigning. He's speaking at events. He's speaking somewhere in Fairbanks. He was in Palmer. He's I've been told he's committed up to $1 million of his own money. He's waiting until August. There's some attorneys general group that he's ahead of, and I guess they're having some big conference or summit here. And then I think he's going to file after that. He's going to have some kind of launching off point with this group that's going to be up here. So he's going to probably run. He's going to run. He's already out there, campaigning, shadow campaigning. Adam Crum, revenue commissioner, he's going to get in there. He's telling people he's going to be the next governor. You got Peter Machicki. You've heard his name a lot. There's apparently some unknown doctor and Republican in the Kenai who's got a lot of money. I'm hearing, I don't even know, I forget the guy's name, but he's supposed to put a lot of his own money into the race. Natasha von Imhoff, you hear about her. And then you hear other names, Kathy Giesel, Shelley Hughes. I mean, Kathy already filed for the Senate, so I don't think she's going to do it. She's up for re-election. Shelley Hughes. And then you got the Democrats. They're, like I said, they're a little bit better in Alaska about just knowing, reading the chessboard, kind of reading the room. And it's going to be Peltola, maybe. There's a lot of chatter that she might run against Sullivan. And if you remember last week or the last 2 weeks, they were running this barrage of ads against Sullivan and the Medicaid stuff. So I think there's some polling going on right now, some polling in the field. I think they're trying to kind of weaken Sullivan or make him seem, not as much of a lock, even though we're in a Republican state. So they might run Peltola against him. That she might do that. That's kind of riskier and more difficult in the U.S. Senate race, very expensive. But it's either that or governor. I mean, it's kind of weird. She was like the grand marshal of the Pride Parade last week there in Anchorage. So, I don't know how much that bodes for her, in places like the Valley and, Kenai and conservative areas. But I don't know what she's going to do. I hear she's making a boatload of money over at Holland and Hart, this lobbying law firm. I cannot confirm this, but I heard $400,000. So I don't know if she has to quit the job or if she can keep the job, but she's making big money over there at the Holland and Hart. So I've heard Tom Begich's name potentially as a Democrat who could run for that seat. There's governor, governor seat I'm talking about. I don't know who's going to run against Sullivan. They're going to have a hard time. I mean, it's a Republican state. Sullivan's pretty well liked. He's not. It's not like nobody's ever a shoo-in 100%. So they're going to go after him. They're trying to recruit somebody. They want somebody to run against him. If anything, just to distract him from and resources from going other places. There's a third of the Senate's up every 2 years. So there's 33 or 34 Senate seats up next year. So that's kind of the live stream for today. I'm doing more of these. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank John Quick out of Kenai for sponsoring this live stream. I really appreciate it. He supports independent journalism, and I really appreciate it. This is, it's there's equipment which I've lucky to have, but there's always cost to this stuff. So really want to again thank John Quick for being a sponsor of the live stream. If you like the live stream, if you like my stuff, you can go to the website alaskalandmine.com/subscribe. You can give $10 or $50 one time, or you can do it monthly or whatever you want. I really appreciate the support. Or if you have an organization or business or campaign for whatever, we sell ads on the website, and we have really good analytics. We have a lot of eyeballs on the website. We have all kinds of ad spots available, and if you want to do something a little bit longer term, like we can work with you on the price. So I appreciate that. So. That's kind of the summary. We had the cesspool of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Stay tuned for an article about the snow machine Russia nonsense. James Parkin, fifth candidate to run for governor. Steve Menard's filing the rematch against Moore because these lunatic Republicans don't know how to just not go after their own. And the special session August 2nd, they're teeing up for that. That's going to get real weird. I can't even imagine how that's going to go. There's no predicting that. So again, I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank